Day 10. First thing, we talked about the first two units, 3/4 of the class, primarily foundation cybersecurity. Terms, there's some terms. There's always ways to access those terms via the web. Then there's that certain amount that you should know that allows you to apply the information. Lots of ways to access it, data to information, but how do you judge the value of the information and how you're going to use it and so forth. So still trying to emphasize getting a foundation of understanding. Security, we talked about controlling content. Later on we'll use the term content ID. Access via the web, how can we control it through browsers, firewalls, routers, access control lists. You can put software on your client to manage what particular content is reachable. Some content, even though like Google, even though that's maybe wide used by a lot of people, there was a time Mercy 1 wouldn't allow you to access anything on Google. So I was trying to communicate with some people at Mercy 1 through my Gmail, and they weren't getting the mail. Okay, just because of the broadness of that. I gave the example YouTube. There's a podcast about the development of YouTube. It's called Rabbit Hole, if you're interested. New York Times. We talked about servers, remote access, remote desktop protocol, port 3389, privilege access. This gets into that. We talked about, levels of access, like at root for Linux, how dangerous that can be. Remote access, SSH, telnet, and we talked about the example of telnetting, SSHing in the work server 2, but then telnetting into the access router. So, clarify that. You come in, maybe from home, through the internet. The first router you hit, the edge router, it decides that this traffic, /27, goes this way, and then the other traffic goes into that's not Mason City, that's the main campus at Nyack. Then the firewall NATs it and converts it to an inside address, which then gets you to work server 1, then you telnet to the access router, which then distributes the information to up to 32 different connections to equipment. We talked a little bit more about VPN, and I will discuss. This was a situation that came up while we were working on the firewall yesterday. A lot of work today. The students did some research on Zero Trust, watched a little video, talked about best practices. There's a lot of best practices in terms of managing groups, group policies, directory services. We looked at a lot of things. Taking rights away, recording sessions, sensitive information, data classify. I should have wrote the other way, classify data. It's intellectual property, looks like IP address. And we're still talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? That's why power is important. Data centers, different power supply than the rest of the building, different power source. Conditioning the power coming in, keeping the equipment cool, and also the networking part of HVAC, managing that from remote locations. The students did some search on directory services. They looked up what they would be for Linux. They gave some examples, really good examples, and then we talked a little more about 802 1X, network access control, we can log into a access point, and it can authenticate us through the radius server before it lets us actually connect to the network. And the radius server can sync to some directory services, whether it's Active Directory or LDAP or whatever it might be. We just did some research on that. Talk about monitoring hardware, and the students did a little project to check that. And then we got into network security, network operations center, security operations center, information security operations center. Reviewed some things like the red team works on attacking the blue team, and the purple team works with both. You don't hear this term as much. Students were to draw a logical diagram of the network work, and then we did some access lists. We talked about how the network looks. Okay, we have the routers. Each student has their own router and switch they can work with. And we did a little bit of work here. I'll use another color here. They created, I don't know how many got that far, created a access list to control the traffic coming in so that pings couldn't come in, but somebody else could come in and still telnet to the equipment. And we did a demo one, and then the students worked on that. So we talked a little bit about how access lists work and permit or deny. And there is a video in the worksheet that we were working on for the labs. Wrap up. Talk about filtering traffic, control content. Make sure you submit that lab work today, Chapter 8. We'll start talking about ethics, which will extend out, you know, ethics in general, ethics in the business world, ethics in the IT world, and how that extends out. And we'll be referencing ethics the rest of the way through. Finish up Chapter 8 tomorrow, get started on the Palo Alto stuff. And that's it.